Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, preparing to check in on what I've come to know as my castings boulders bin. And I mean, as long as you know it's the castings boulders bin, what else do you need to know? It's a bin with a fairly small starting population of European nightcrawlers placed into kind of an experimental batch of material, stuff that was caught in my screen when I was sifting through all my collected vermicompost. What we ended up with was a bunch of stuff that still kind of shows its what gave it its name, basically the fact that it's little round balls. Well, not that they're round, but they're all little clumps basically. And whenever you handle one, luckily they're all soft enough that they can break apart. Perhaps the ones out here on the surface are a little drier by having only been covered with paper. Perhaps stuff that we were to excavate, dig down a little bit, pull some up, we would maybe be able to crush that a little bit easier. Perhaps it's a little bit more damp. But to go through this whole bin, handling every single individual fragment and breaking them all apart seems a bit much. Nothing I was intending to ever do. But really quick, before we get all dirty here, let's finish reviewing the info I came down here with. We fed this system 11 times so far over its 151 days in service. 2 weeks have passed since we last checked in here. And I even propped up their feeding. Some stuff out of my freezer, some plums, it seems, and a couple strawberry I threw in there just for good measure. And we adopted this ping pong approach to feeding, sending the feeding zone from one side of the system to the other each time we checked in. So following suit with that, we'll be applying their feeding on the opposite side. But let's first check out how things look over here. Here, that's the sort of consistency you'd want, right? All kinds of really fine material, just like that, I somehow have become over time a little bit skeptical as to whether or not we'll ever achieve that with this stuff here. It's hard to imagine that this stuff would just suddenly decide on its own to start crumbling and falling apart. And it almost does seem like without direct hands-on attention, it's not going to do much. So let's see how the material here looks. You would have to guess that if the material was not all that exciting to be in, the feeding zone would be the only place to find worms. But I guess I am more curious to see if worms are actually kind of hanging out in the vermicompost. You got to remember, with the feeding zone getting switched back and forth, it was only 2 weeks ago that it was really this side of the bin that was mainly the heavy, the majority of the system's population. And in pursuit of the food that we plopped in on the opposite side, we've probably got the majority of the worms over there. It does almost seem like the worms are a little bit few and far between out here in the reaches, furthest away from the feeding zone. But there's a couple here and there. Perhaps they already had their fill and they just decided they wanted to work off the meal and just be on their own a little bit. Enjoy a little bit of privacy. I found a little bit of this and that too, perhaps some potato peel fragments or something. I don't know what these are. Sometimes if you feed certain types of materials, bits and pieces of it are left over. And I guess I'm curious to see after 2 weeks how they've done with their last feeding. Today I did not prepare for this check-in by reviewing what we did last time in here, so I just trusted that I knew enough by knowing that it was a ping pong feeding, so I would just be feeding on the side opposite of where we last checked in. I figured I would be able to find that pretty easily with our little feeding zone indicator thing that we put out there. But yeah, it looks to me like we've got a nice little turnout of worms hanging out here. And how much smoother the material feels over on this side too. All crumbly and loose, not like the boulders. Castings boulders. What a funny concept. I like it though, it's fun. But man, it would be nice if the entire system was nice, flaky, loose stuff like what we just dug up there. But whatever. Just a fun experiment we're just playing with. We'll see where it leads. going forward. Let's just lift all this material over into the hole that we have over there, and then slowly backfill the rest of the system's contents, giving ourselves a nice new spot to put today's feeding into. And as you saw, all the worms that are occupying the system, or at least a large majority of them, are over on that side. And by the next time we come back in here to check in on them, it's very likely that they'll have all moved over to this side in pursuit of the yummy plum and strawberry feast that we're going to give them. It's going to include a little bit of grit too, throw in a little bit of my prepared bedding first. The grit's always set up here, almost always sitting here, but how many times I forget to apply it, so I just wanted to see if I can remind myself so I don't space out on it. But you know, after this being its 12th feeding, those 11 feedings that came prior, it's very likely that grit was applied in the past, and grit does sort of stay in the system from what I hear, so I'm sure they're okay from the grit perspective. But hey, I got all these eggshells, I collect them up, I grind them down. I mean, they're here to be given to the worms, so let's give it to the worms. I don't know, somehow this seemed to me like a somewhat larger portion when I took it out of the fridge, but now that it's in here, it doesn't seem like it's all that much. Well, hopefully they like it. Hopefully by the time we come back in here, we'll see another beautiful pile of just castings only down here. And man, that was such a nice batch of material down there when we excavated into it and pulled up all the wormies. And it was pretty fun worm spotting there. It's not a very heavily populated bin, but still enough of a crowd living in here to make for an interesting check-in. You know, I'm going to be super generous here with the bedding, I believe, because I do like the idea of covering up a lovely, delicious, fruity meal like this a little bit more thoroughly, just so we don't end up with intruders coming in pursuit of the delicious fragrances that are going to be coming out of here with this delicious fruity meal in here. But that's going to be our check-in with the European night crawlers and the castings boulders bin. You know, in time they'll keep on making lovely castings and they'll just keep getting blended in and stuff, and perhaps at some point in the future we could just screen out the boulders and think of something else to do with them. But I'm sure we'll still be able to harvest a nice batch of castings out of here at some point in the future. So they're doing a nice job. The material's got a good moisture level to it, perhaps a little more than we really need, but hey, that should provide them with a good environment to be happy and healthy in, hopefully. And well, I think it's going to be nice and juicy over there, even though the prepared bedding I use is a little bit dry. It's not that bad. And all that fruit going in there, I believe it's going to kick off a lot of moisture. It's probably going to be really nice in there pretty soon. The worms are going to love it. So I got a couple things I got to take care of getting cleaned up and put away over here. But I'm not going to waste your time with that. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.